The scout ship Meridian screamed through Vern's atmosphere like a wounded bird, its hull glowing cherry red as Leo fought the failing controls. Warning klaxons shrieked, but his hazel eyes remained focused, calculating trajectories even as the jungle canopy rushed up to meet him. "Come on, you stubborn piece of—" The impact cut off his curse, throwing him against the restraints as metal crumpled and systems died. Steam hissed from ruptured coolant lines, and the acrid smell of burning circuits filled his nostrils. Leo unbuckled himself with practiced efficiency, his calloused hands checking for injuries. A cut on his left cheek bled freely, but nothing felt broken. The ship's emergency kit yielded a medpack and his trusty multi-tool. Outside, Vern's jungle pulsed with bioluminescent life, casting everything in an ethereal blue-green glow. He was scavenging plasma conduits from the wreckage when the ground trembled. Leo's sun-tanned face tilted up, scanning the massive trees, and his breath caught. Figures moved through the canopy with impossible grace. Tall, impossibly tall, their emerald skin catching the strange light. The patrol dropped from the trees like falling meteors, landing with thuds that shook the earth. Leo's hand instinctively moved to his sidearm, then froze as he took in their true size. 12 feet of muscle and alien majesty surrounded him, spears glinting in their massive hands. But it was their leader who made his heart skip. She descended last, a goddess of emerald and silver, her braided hair cascading past shoulders that could bench press a shuttle. Golden eyes regarded him with amusement as she straightened to her full height, casting him in shadow. "What is this?" Her voice was a low, resonant purr that seemed to vibrate through his bones. A little pink creature from the sky? Leo straightened, meeting her gaze despite the 12-foot height difference. His scarred cheek pulled tight as he offered his trademark half-smirk. "Leo Hartwell, Scout Second Class, and you are?" The Giantess threw back her head and laughed, a sound like distant thunder. "I am Thyra, Warlord of the Varkesh, and you," she gestured dismissively with one massive hand, "are very, very small." Her warriors chuckled, their spears lowering slightly. Leo felt heat rise in his cheeks, but kept his voice level. "Size isn't everything. Sometimes the smallest gear makes the whole machine work." Thyra's golden eyes glittered with something between irritation and intrigue. She leaned down, bringing her face level with his, her breath warm against his skin. "Clever words, little human. Let us see if your actions match." The trek to their village was a lesson in humility. Leo's legs burned trying to match the Varkesh stride, but he refused to complain. The jungle around them was alive with dangers, luminous flowers that snapped at anything that moved, vines that writhed with predatory intent, the distant roars of unseen beasts. Thyra moved like liquid grace beside him, occasionally glancing down with an expression he couldn't read. When he stumbled on a root, her massive hand shot out, steadying him with surprising gentleness. "Your kind is fragile," she observed, not unkindly. "Fragile enough to survive," Leo replied, pushing a lock of tousled brown hair from his forehead. "Sometimes flexibility beats raw strength." The canopy village took his breath away. Massive platforms woven between ancient trees, connected by bridges that swayed gently in the humid breeze. Varkesh moved about their business, their movements purposeful and strong. Children, if 8-foot-tall youngsters could be called children, peered at him with curious golden eyes. A crowd gathered as Thyra led him to the central platform. The jeers started immediately. "Look how small! Can it even lift a spear? What use is such a tiny thing?" Leo kept his chin up, his hazel eyes calm despite the intimidating circle of giants. He'd faced worse odds before, though admittedly not while being literally looked down upon by everyone present. Thyra raised her hand for silence, her leather harness creaking as she turned to address her people. "This human fell from the sky. Until we know why, he is under my protection." Her golden gaze found his again, softening almost imperceptibly. "But do not mistake protection for coddling, little human. You will earn your place here, or you will not stay." Leo's half-smirk returned, and he rubbed his scarred cheek thoughtfully. "Wouldn't have it any other way, Warlord." As the crowd dispersed, Leo caught Thyra watching him with an expression that wasn't quite disdain anymore. Something had shifted in that first exchange, a crack in her armor of amused superiority. She turned away quickly, but not before he saw the faint flush of emerald across her high cheekbones. The night brought cooler air and the haunting songs of Vern's nocturnal creatures. Leo sat on the edge of his assigned platform, legs dangling, studying the alien constellations overhead. His multi-tool caught the starlight as he made minor repairs to his equipment, the familiar work calming his nerves. Footsteps made the platform vibrate gently. Thyra approached, moving with that fluid grace that made her seem to float despite her size. She'd removed her battle harness, revealing the elegant lines of her muscled form beneath simple leather wrappings. "You do not sleep," she observed, settling down beside him with surprising care not to jostle the platform too much. "Processing," Leo replied, not looking up from his work. "New world, new rules, takes time to adapt. And if you cannot adapt—" Now he did look at her, noting how the bioluminescent glow played across her emerald skin, how her silver braids caught the light like spun moonbeams. "Then I improvise. It's what humans do best." Thyra's laugh was softer this time, less mocking. "We shall see, Leo Hartwell, we shall see." As she rose to leave, her massive hand briefly touched his shoulder, a gesture so quick he might have imagined it, if not for the warmth that lingered long after she'd gone. The Canopy village buzzed with morning activity, and Leo found himself the center of unwanted attention. Varkesh warriors paused in their training to stare at the small human attempting to navigate platforms designed for 12-foot frames. His muscles ached from the constant climbing, but his expression remained determinedly cheerful. "Little human!" A lanky Varkesh approached, his mottled green skin helping him blend with the jungle shadows. Pale yellow eyes darted nervously as he bounced on his toes. "Thyra sends word. You join scouting patrol, yes? I am guide. I show you jungle secrets." The scout's fingers tapped restlessly against his curved blade's hilt. Leo studied the twitchy alien, noting the genuine curiosity beneath the nervousness. "Lead the way, friend. Name's Leo." "Names are earned here," the scout replied, his high-pitched voice trailing off as he glanced toward Thyra's quarters. "But I think maybe you earn yours soon." The jungle floor was a different world from the canopy. Massive roots created natural highways between towering trees whose trunks could house entire human settlements. Bioluminescent fungi painted everything in shifting blues and greens, while the air hummed with the songs of unseen creatures. Leo moved with practiced stealth, his scout training evident in every careful step. The Varkesh guide's nervousness began to fade as he watched the human navigate obstacles with surprising agility. "You move like Shadow," the guide observed, his darting eyes showing approval. Small but clever, Thyra chose well for this test. They were examining strange markings on a massive tree when Thyra herself appeared, dropping from the canopy with feline grace. Her golden eyes immediately found Leo, and he caught something that might have been pleasure at seeing him unharmed. "The human keeps pace," she noted, addressing the scout but watching Leo. "Surprising." "Jungle's just another puzzle to solve," Leo replied, straightening from his examination of the markings. "These scratches look fresh. Something big made them." Thyra moved closer, her towering form casting him in shadow as she studied the gouges. "Klyntar beasts mark territory, but these are too close to our borders." Her jaw tightened, and Leo noticed how the muscles in her neck corded with tension. "Then we should—" The attack came without warning. A mass of chitin and fury burst from the undergrowth, mandibles clicking as it charged toward Thyra. The beast stood 8 feet at the shoulder, its bioengineered muscles rippling beneath armored hide. Leo moved without thinking. His multi-tool flicked open, revealing a plasma cutter, and he dove sideways, rolling beneath the creature's snapping jaws. The beam sliced through a supporting vine, and massive branch crashed down, pinning the beast's hind legs. "Now!" Leo shouted. Thyra needed no encouragement. Her spear took the creature through the neck, emerald blood spraying across the jungle floor. As it collapsed, she turned to stare at Leo, her golden eyes wide with something like wonder. She seemed to struggle for words. "You saved me." Leo wiped sweat from his brow, leaving a streak of dirt across his sun-tanned skin. "Teamwork! You finished it." But Thyra was still staring, and Leo became acutely aware of her proximity. The battle had left her breathing hard, her muscled chest rising and falling, and when she reached out to touch his arm, her fingers lingered longer than necessary. "You're quick thinking," she said softly, her deep voice holding a note he hadn't heard before. "I misjudged you, human." The scout bounced nervously nearby, his yellow eyes darting between them. "Warlord, we should return. More beasts may come." Thyra straightened, her mask of authority sliding back into place, but not before Leo caught the way her emerald skin had flushed darker along her throat. "Yes, we return." The journey back was different. Thyra walked closer to Leo, occasionally steadying him over difficult terrain with touches that seemed almost unconscious. When they reached a stream crossing, she simply scooped him up, carrying him across with an ease that made his heart race for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. "I can swim," he protested weakly, very aware of her strength, of the way her braided hair fell like a silver curtain around them. "The current is strong," she replied, but her arms didn't release him immediately when they reached the other side. For a moment they stood frozen, her golden eyes searching his hazel ones. The scout's nervous clearing of his throat broke the spell. Thyra set Leo down gently, her hands trailing across his shoulders as she released him. Back in the village, word of the beast encounter spread quickly. Leo found himself the subject of curious rather than mocking stares. The Varkesh healer, a stooped figure with faded silver hair, approached him with surprising directness. "Small man saved Thyra?" Her gravely voice held dry amusement. "Maybe size not everything after all." "Just doing what needed doing," Leo replied, but he caught Thyra watching from across the platform, her posture less rigid than before. That evening she found him again at his usual spot, but this time she brought food, massive portions by human standards, carefully arranged on leaves. "You fought well today," she said, settling beside him with less care about maintaining distance. "We fought well," Leo corrected, accepting the offered meal. "That's what partners do." The word partners seemed to hang in the air between them. Thyra's hand moved unconsciously to adjust her braids, a gesture Leo was beginning to recognize as a sign of uncertainty. "Is that what we are?" she asked finally, her voice softer than usual. Leo met her gaze steadily. "Could be, if you're willing to look past the size difference." For the first time since he'd met her, Thyra smiled. Not her usual commanding expression, but something genuine and warm. "Perhaps I already am Leo Hartwell." The morning sun filtered through Vern's canopy, casting dancing shadows across the platform where Leo worked. His salvaged plasma cutter lay in pieces around him, circuits and focusing crystals arranged with surgical precision. The Varkesh watched with growing fascination as the small human transformed crash debris into something purposeful. The nervous scout, Leo had taken to thinking of him as Flicker, though he kept the nickname to himself, crouched nearby, his pale yellow eyes wide with curiosity. "How does tiny human make sky metal obey?" Leo looked up from his work, a smudge of lubricant across his cheek. "Everything has rules, physics, engineering, even alien tech." He held up a modified focusing array. "Find the rules, adapt them to your needs." Thyra approached, her footsteps vibrating through the platform. She'd taken to checking on his progress regularly, though she always maintained it was merely strategic interest. Today she wore her full battle harness, leather straps emphasizing the powerful lines of her frame. "The Klyntar raids grow bolder," she announced, her golden eyes troubled. 3 outposts hit in 2 days. They probe our defenses." Leo's hands never paused in their work, but his hazel eyes sharpened with interest. "Same tactics each time?" "Overwhelming force. Bio-beasts to break our lines, then their warriors finish the slaughter." Thyra's jaw clenched, and Leo noticed how she unconsciously flexed her hands when angry. "Our strength means nothing against their numbers." "Then don't fight their fight." Leo set down his tools and stood, moving to a section of bark he'd been using to sketch plans. "Look, your villages are up here, right? Perfect defensive positions if you use them correctly." He began drawing with a piece of charcoal, his movements quick and sure. Channeling attacks through predetermined routes, using the terrain against them. The jungle itself becomes your weapon. Thyra leaned closer to study his sketches, her braided hair falling forward like a silver waterfall. Leo caught her scent, something earthy and warm, like rainfall on rich soil. When she spoke, her breath stirred his tousled brown hair. "You think like a warrior, but differently than we do." Her massive hand hovered near his shoulder, not quite touching. "Show me more." The planning session stretched into the afternoon. Leo found himself standing closer to Thyra as they discussed tactics, their height difference becoming less important as she leaned down to follow his diagrams. Several times their hands brushed as they pointed to different sections of his plans, and each contact sent electricity up Leo's arm. The healer approached during a lull, her weathered face creased with something between amusement and approval. "Little human makes big warrior think new thoughts," she observed dryly. "Good, big thoughts in small packages sometimes." Thyra's emerald skin darkened with what Leo was learning to recognize as her version of a blush. "His strategies have merit. We will test them." "Test more than strategies, I think," the healer muttered, just loud enough for Leo to hear. Her gravely chuckle followed her as she shuffled away. By evening, Leo had his weapon reassembled. The plasma cutter now sported an extended barrel and improved focusing chamber, transforming it from a tool into something far more dangerous. He was running final diagnostics when Thyra returned from her patrol. "The weapon is ready?" she asked, settling beside him with the casual intimacy that had developed over their shared planning. "Ready as it'll ever be." Leo activated the device, a lance of brilliant energy humming to life. "Not much range, but it'll cut through most anything." Thyra's golden eyes reflected the plasma's glow. "You make weapons from broken things. There is poetry in that." Their conversation was interrupted by commotion from the village edge. Flicker burst onto the platform, his nervous energy cranked to maximum. "Warlord, Klyntar force approaches. Small group, but they have new beast type." Thyra was on her feet instantly, her battle instincts taking over. "How long?" 1 hour, maybe less. They come up the western approach through the root channels. Leo stood as well, his plasma weapon powering up with a distinctive whine. "Perfect, that's exactly where we want them." The trap was elegant in its simplicity. Leo's modified charges, shaped from the ship's power cells, had been placed at key points along the approach route. Camouflaged pit traps waited at the base of the trees, while carefully weakened branches hung ready to fall at the right moment. Thyra positioned her warriors according to Leo's plans, though Leo could see their discomfort with the unfamiliar tactics. They were used to direct confrontation, not this careful manipulation of terrain and timing. "Remember," Leo called softly as they took their positions, "let them come to us. The jungle fight's on our side today." The Klyntar force approached with typical overconfidence. Leo counted 8 warriors, and something that made his skin crawl. A spider-like creature the size of a ground car, its legs ending in razor-sharp points. Bioengineered muscles bulged beneath its chitinous hide. "Wait for it!" Leo whispered into his comm unit, watching the enemy force enter the kill zone. The lead warriors passed the first trigger point, then the second. Now, the explosions came in sequence, collapsing carefully selected sections of the approach route. The Klyntar found themselves channeled into an even narrower passage, bunched together and struggling over unstable ground. That's when Thyra's warriors struck from above. The battle was brief but vicious. Caught off guard by the unfamiliar tactics, the Klyntar couldn't bring their superior numbers to bear. Leo's plasma weapon carved through the spider beast's legs, while Thyra's spear took it through what passed for its brain. As the last enemy fell, an odd silence settled over the jungle. The Varkesh warriors looked at Leo with new respect, their earlier skepticism replaced by grudging admiration. "Your trap worked," Thyra said, her voice holding a note of wonder. "Their forces destroyed, and we lost no one." Leo powered down his weapon, suddenly feeling the exhaustion of the day's preparations. Brains over brawn. Sometimes it actually works. Thyra stepped closer, her golden eyes bright with something Leo couldn't quite identify. "You continue to surprise me, human." Her massive hand rose to touch his cheek, her thumb tracing the line of his scar with unexpected gentleness. "Perhaps I should stop being surprised." The touch lingered longer than it should have, and Leo found himself leaning into her palm despite their impossible size difference. Around them, the other warriors had begun salvaging enemy equipment, but he was only aware of Thyra's warmth, of the way her breathing had subtly changed. Warlord Flicker's voice cut through the moment like a blade. "We found something in their packs. Maps. They know location of other villages." Thyra's hand dropped away from Leo's face, but not before he saw the reluctance in her eyes. "Show me." As they studied the captured intelligence, Leo became aware of a shift in their dynamic. Thyra stood closer now, her massive frame no longer used to intimidate, but to include. When she pointed to locations on the map, she made sure he could see. When she asked for his opinion, it was with the respect due an equal. The village celebrated their victory late into the night, but Leo found himself drawn to his usual thinking spot at the platform's edge. Thyra joined him there, as he'd hoped she would. "Today changed things," she said without preamble, her voice carrying easily over the jungle's night chorus. "Had to. Can't fight tomorrow's war with yesterday's tactics." Leo glanced up at her profile, noting how the bioluminescent glow caught the elegant line of her jaw. "Question is, what do we do with the change?" Thyra's smile was soft in the alien starlight. "We adapt, Leo Hartwell, as you taught me." Her hand found his shoulder, vast but gentle. "We adapt together." Dawn came with the sound of battle horns echoing across the jungle, their mournful wails announcing another Klyntar raid. Leo snapped awake on his platform, his hand automatically reaching for his plasma weapon as Varkesh warriors rushed past in organized chaos. Thyra's voice boomed above the din, directing the defense with practiced authority. "Second squad to the eastern approaches. Flicker, get your scouts to the perimeter!" Leo rolled to his feet, checking his equipment with military precision. The past week's skirmishes had taught him the rhythm of these attacks, probing strikes designed to test their new defensive strategies. But something felt different about this one. Human! The healer's gravelly voice cut through the noise as she approached at a surprising speed for her stooped frame. "Thyra wants you at the command platform. Says your small brain thinks better under pressure." Leo grinned despite the circumstances. Coming from her, that's practically a love poem. The healer's weathered face cracked into a rare smile. "Maybe is, little human, maybe is." The command platform buzzed with controlled chaos. Thyra stood at its center, her emerald skin gleaming with perspiration as she coordinated the defense. Her silver braids swayed as she turned to acknowledge Leo's arrival, and he caught that now familiar softening in her golden eyes. "The Klyntar bring something new," she said without preamble, gesturing toward the jungle where explosions bloomed like deadly flowers. "Bioweapons we haven't seen before. They're adapting to our tactics." Leo moved to stand beside her, close enough to feel the heat radiating from her massive frame. The site below was organized chaos. Varkesh defenders using his terrain modifications to channel attacking forces, while strange new creatures pressed against their lines. "They're learning," he agreed, his tactical mind analyzing the attack patterns, "but they're also getting desperate. This isn't a probing attack, it's a full commitment." A particularly violent explosion shook the platform, and Thyra's hand shot out to steady him. The contact was brief but electric, her touch lingering just long enough to send heat up his arm. "My scouts report a larger force massing to the north," she continued, but Leo noticed the slight breathiness in her voice. "We may need to fall back to secondary positions." Or, Leo paused, struck by a sudden thought, "My ship, there might be something there we can use." Thyra's golden eyes sharpened with interest. "You mentioned salvaging weapons." "Not weapons, something better." Leo turned to face her fully, excitement building in his voice. "If the terraformer core survived the crash—" "Terraformer?" Thyra's massive frame went very still. "Planetary engineering tech. It could restore damaged ecosystems, accelerate plant growth, even modify atmospheric composition." Leo's hazel eyes burned with possibility. "If it's intact, we might be able to turn this entire jungle into an impregnable fortress." The implications hit Thyra like a physical blow. Leo saw her emerald skin pale, her hands unconsciously clenching into fists. Such technology, it could reshape worlds. "It could save your people," Leo said softly. Their moment was shattered by Flicker's arrival, the nervous scout practically vibrating with panic. "Warlord! The northern line breaks! New beast type bigger than before!" Through the jungle canopy, Leo could see a massive shape moving between the trees. The creature stood twice as tall as a Varkesh warrior, its multiple limbs ending in energy weapons that carved through their defenses like paper. "Fall back to secondary positions," Thyra commanded, but Leo could hear the desperation creeping into her voice. "No," Leo said firmly. "Give me a squad. I'm going to retrieve that terraformer." "Absolutely not. The jungle between here and your crash site is crawling with enemies." Leo stepped closer, close enough to see his reflection in her golden eyes. "Thyra, trust me, I can get there." For a heartbeat, they stood frozen in a moment of perfect understanding. Then Thyra's massive hand cupped his face with infinite gentleness. "If I lose you," she began, her deep voice barely above a whisper. "You won't," Leo promised, leaning into her touch. "But if we don't try this, you'll lose everything anyway." Thyra's internal struggle played out across her features. Finally, she straightened to her full height, authority flooding back into her posture. "Take Flicker and 2 others. Go!" The journey to the crash site was a nightmare of stealth and speed. Leo led his small team through paths he'd memorized during his early explorations, while the sounds of battle echoed behind them. Twice they had to hide from Klyntar patrols, pressing themselves against massive tree trunks while enemy forces passed mere feet away. The Meridian sat where he'd left it, though vines had already begun claiming the wreckage. Leo's heart pounded as he forced his way into the ship's belly, following half-remembered schematics toward the engineering bay. "Please be there," he muttered, clearing away debris with increasingly frantic movements. The terraformer core sat in its housing like a jewel in a shattered crown, 3 feet of crystalline perfection, its surface pulsing with stored energy. Leo's hands shook as he ran diagnostics. Power levels stable, primary systems functional, quantum matrices intact. "We can save them," he breathed. "Save who from what?" The voice came from behind him, cold and mocking. Leo spun to find a familiar, scarred face, the Klyntar spy he'd seen lurking around the village edges. The traitor's black eyes glittered with malicious satisfaction as he raised a Varkesh energy weapon. "Little human finds sky magic, yes? Klyntar Warlord will be pleased." The spy's sibilant voice carried cruel amusement. "Maybe he let you live long enough to watch Thyra die." Leo's plasma weapon was at his side, but the spy already had him covered. Through the ship's hull, he could hear the sounds of his team fighting, their shouts growing desperate. "You know what the difference is between you and me?" Leo asked conversationally, his hand inching toward his multi-tool. "What, tiny human?" "I pay attention to my surroundings." Leo's finger found the emergency coolant release. Superheated gas erupted from the ship's damaged systems, filling the engineering bay with scalding mist. The spy's shot went wide as he stumbled blindly, and Leo's plasma beam took him center mass. By the time his team fought their way to him, Leo had the terraformer core secured in a jury-rigged carrier. Flicker's yellow eyes were wide with something approaching awe. "What is it, human? It feels powerful." "Hope," Leo replied. "It's hope." The journey back was even more harrowing than the trip out. Klyntar forces seemed to be everywhere, their new bioweapons pushing deeper into Varkesh territory. When they finally reached the village, Leo's heart sank at the sight of smoke rising from several platforms. Thyra met them at the perimeter, her battle harness scorched and her emerald skin marked with minor wounds. But her golden eyes blazed with fierce joy at seeing Leo unharmed. "You found it," she said, staring at the terraformer core with something approaching reverence. "Found it and brought it home." Leo set the device down carefully, then found himself swept up in Thyra's embrace. For a moment, their size difference meant nothing. She was simply a woman relieved to see someone she cared about safe. "I thought," she began, her voice thick with emotion. "I know." Leo's arms wrapped around her neck as far as they could reach. "But we're here, and we have a chance now." When she finally set him down, Leo caught the healer watching them with undisguised satisfaction. The old female's gravely chuckle carried clearly across the platform. "Big feelings and big heart," she observed dryly. "About time." Thyra's emerald flush was magnificent, but she didn't deny the implication. Instead, she turned her attention to the terraformer core, her expression shifting to tactical assessment. "How do we use it?" Leo knelt beside the device, his hands dancing over its control surfaces. First, we need to establish parameters. This jungle, these specific genetic patterns. Then we tell it what we want to change. As if summoned by his words, another explosion echoed from the battle lines. The massive bioweapon they'd seen earlier was pushing through the last defensive positions, its energy weapons carving through ancient trees like kindling. "How long?" Thyra asked. Leo's fingers flew over the controls, diagnostic data streaming across the device's crystalline surface. 20 minutes for initial calibration, maybe less. "We don't have 20 minutes. Leo looked up to meet her golden gaze, seeing his own determination reflected there. "Then we make 20 minutes. Thyra nodded once, sharp and decisive. "Flicker! Signal full retreat to the inner perimeter. All forces fall back to the core platforms." She turned back to Leo, her expression soft despite the chaos around them. "Do what you must. We'll buy you the time." As she strode away to organize the final defense, Leo heard her voice carrying across the platform. "Varkesh! Today we fight not just for territory, but for our future. Let them see what we're truly made of." The answering roar from her warriors shook the trees themselves. And in the heart of it all, Leo worked frantically to save a world he'd only just learned to love, driven by feelings for a woman who'd gone from laughing at his size to trusting him with everything that mattered. The terraformer core hummed with barely contained energy as Leo made the final calibrations, sweat beading on his sun-tanned forehead despite the cool morning air. Around him, the Varkesh prepared for what might be their final stand. Weapons sharpened, armor checked, prayers whispered to whatever gods watched over giant warriors. Thyra's voice carried across the platform as she organized the retreat. "Inner perimeter holds at all costs. We buy the human his time." Her golden eyes found his across the chaos, a moment of connection that spoke louder than words. The healer shuffled over to Leo's position, her weathered hands clutching a bundle of medicinal supplies. "Little human works sky magic while world burns around him," she observed in her gravelly voice, "either very brave or very stupid." "Probably both," Leo admitted, not looking up from the device's crystalline interface. "Story of my life." Flicker bounded onto the platform, his nervous energy cranked to maximum. "Human, Klyntar, bring the big bad thing closer. Our warriors fall back, but slow, very slow." His pale yellow eyes darted between Leo and the terraformer. "How much more time you need?" 15 minutes for primary calibration," Leo replied, his fingers dancing over alien controls. "Then another 10 for deployment sequence." He looked up at the scout's anxious face. "Can your people hold that long?" "Thyra says we hold until sky falls or enemy breaks," Flicker replied with touching faith. "So we hold." The battle raged closer with each passing minute. Leo could hear the distinctive whine of the massive bioweapons energy cannons, the crash of falling trees, the war cries of Varkesh warriors pushed to their limits. Through it all, Thyra's voice carried like a beacon, directing the defense with tactical brilliance that made Leo's heart swell with pride. "Second squad, fall back through the canopy bridge. Third squad, cover their retreat." The terraformer's diagnostic display flickered through spectrum analyses of Vern's ecosystem. Leo watched genetic patterns scroll past. Plant life, fungal networks, the complex interactions that kept the jungle in balance. The device was learning, adapting its programming to work with what already existed rather than replacing it. "Beautiful," he murmured, struck by the elegance of the alien technology. "What's beautiful?" Thyra's voice made him look up. She'd returned during his absorption with the device, her battle harness scored with near misses and her emerald skin gleaming with perspiration. "The way it works," Leo explained, gesturing at the scrolling data. "Most terraforming tech is brute force. Tear everything down and rebuild from scratch. But this, it's like conducting a symphony. Every change harmonizes with what's already here." Thyra leaned closer to study the display, her braided hair falling forward like a silver curtain. "You speak of it as if it's alive." "In a way it is. Living systems, living responses." Leo's voice carried genuine wonder. "Your jungle isn't just going to be a fortress, Thyra, it's going to be a paradise." Their moment of shared awe was shattered by an explosion close enough to shower them with debris. The massive bioweapon had broken through the outer defenses, its multiple limbs carrying it between the trees with disturbing grace. Time? Thyra asked, her hand finding Leo's shoulder. 10 minutes, Leo replied, trying to project more confidence than he felt. Thyra's jaw set in determined lines. Then we give you 10 minutes. But even as she spoke, Leo could see the doubt in her golden eyes. The Klyntar weapon was unlike anything they'd faced, faster than its size suggested possible, armed with energy cannons that could level entire platforms. Her warriors were brave, but bravery alone wouldn't stop that thing. There might be another way, Leo said suddenly. The terraformer. I could trigger a localized event. Not the full deployment, but something to slow them down. What kind of localized event? Thyra asked, her voice tight with urgency. The ground trembled beneath them as the Klyntar bioweapon roared, its energy cannons ripping through the last remaining canopy bridges. Leo's fingers flew across the terraformer's interface. Rapid, localized growth. We can make the jungle fight back. Not just a fortress, but an active defense. He pointed to a section of the display. I can target the Klyntar's current position, trigger an explosive burst of vine growth, root entanglement, even stimulate the bioluminescent flora to create blinding flashes. Thyra's golden eyes widened as she grasped the implications. You would turn the jungle against them? It's already trying, Leo said, a grim smile touching his lips. I'm just giving it a boost. It'll buy us the time we need for full deployment and maybe even cripple that big bad thing. Do it, Thyra commanded, her voice firm. Flicker, get ready to lead a countercharge the moment the human gives the signal. Flicker, despite his usual nervousness, nodded with fierce determination. Yes, Warlord. Leo focused, his mind racing through the complex calculations. He isolated the Klyntar bioweapon's current trajectory, overlaid it with the jungle's existing root networks and vine structures, and then initiated the localized terraforming sequence. The crystalline core pulsed brighter, a low thrum vibrating through the platform. Deep within the jungle where the Klyntar bioweapon was advancing, the ground began to heave. Massive roots, dormant for centuries, burst from the earth, coiling around the creature's multiple limbs. Vines, thick as a Varkesh warrior's arm, erupted from the canopy, ensnaring its energy cannons. The bioluminescent flora, stimulated by the terraformer's energy, flared with blinding intensity, disorienting the Klyntar warriors. A shriek of mechanical rage echoed through the trees as the bioweapon struggled, its energy blasts now wild and ineffective. The Klyntar advance faltered, their formation breaking as they fought against an enemy they couldn't see or strike. Now flicker, Thyra roared, her spear held high, for Vern! The Varkesh warriors, emboldened by the jungle's sudden rebellion, surged forward. They moved like emerald shadows through the chaos, their spears finding vital points on the struggling Klyntar and their entangled bioweapon. The tide of battle, for the first time, began to turn. Leo watched, breathless, as the Klyntar force was decimated. The massive bioweapon, crippled and entangled, was finally brought down by a coordinated assault from Thyra and her elite guard. Its multi-limbed body crashed to the ground, shaking the very foundations of the jungle. It worked, Thyra said, returning to the command platform, her face streaked with dirt and emerald blood, but her golden eyes shining with triumph. You bought us more than time, Leo Hartwell. You gave us victory. Leo managed a weak smile, exhaustion finally catching up to him, just needed a little push. The full deployment of the terraformer core took another hour, during which the remaining Klyntar forces, demoralized and leaderless, began to retreat. Leo, with Thyra at his side, guided the device through its final stages. The jungle hummed with a new, vibrant energy. Trees grew taller, their branches intertwining to create an even denser, more resilient canopy. Root systems deepened, forming natural barriers. The bioluminescent flora pulsed with a gentle protective glow. Vern was no longer just a jungle, it was a living shield. In the days that followed, the Klyntar raids ceased entirely, their forces having suffered a crushing defeat at the hands of a jungle that fought back, withdrew from Vern's borders. The Varkesh, for the first time in generations, knew true peace. Leo, no longer just a little human, became a legend among them. He helped Thyra integrate the terraformers' capabilities into their long-term defense strategies, creating a symbiotic relationship between the Varkesh and their revitalized world. The device, now permanently installed in a sacred grove, became a symbol of their resilience and their unexpected alliance. His ship, the Meridian, remained a wreck, a testament to his arrival, but Leo no longer felt the urge to salvage it for escape. Vern was his home now. One evening, as the twin moons of Vern cast long shadows across the Canopy village, Leo found Thyra at their usual spot on the platform's edge. The jungle sang around them, a chorus of life and peace. "The Klyntar have sent an envoy," Thyra said, her voice calm. "They seek a truce. They say they have never encountered a world that fights back with such ferocity." Leo smiled, looking out at the vibrant, thriving jungle. They learned their lesson. Thyra turned to him, her golden eyes soft in the moonlight. She reached out, her massive hand cupping his face, her thumb tracing the line of his scar. "And I learned mine, Leo Hartwell. I learned that true strength is not measured in size, but in spirit, in ingenuity, and in the willingness to protect what you love." Leo leaned into her touch, his heart full. "And what do you love, Warlord?" Thyra's smile was genuine, warm, and utterly captivating. "This world, my people, and a certain small human who taught us how to fight for all of it." Her head lowered, and she pressed her forehead gently against his, a gesture of profound intimacy and respect among the Varkesh. "So what now, Warlord?" Leo whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Thyra pulled back slightly, her gaze unwavering. "Now we build. We heal and we explore what it means to be partners in all things." Her hand moved from his face to intertwine with his, her fingers dwarfing his, yet holding him with perfect tenderness. The healer, shuffling past, paused just long enough to offer a knowing chuckle. "Big hearts, big future. About time, indeed." Leo looked at Thyra, at the vastness of her, and felt no fear, only a profound sense of belonging. The laughter, the initial dismissal, the impossible size difference, all melted away, replaced by a bond forged in battle and strengthened by mutual respect and a burgeoning love. He was no longer just a scout, lost and alone. He was Leo Hartwell, the human who helped a giantess save her world, and in doing so, found his own. The story of the little pink creature from the sky had just begun a new, extraordinary chapter.